A bunch of messages from all hands group chats or one-on-one chats came up from other people, all unrelated about their sisters or whatever, but my heart dropped out of my ass when I saw there was a direct message from Jake, the guy from the bar, to Josh from a Monday a few months ago. Jake's messages said, "Ran into your little sis at the bar on Friday. She's single, right?" And my husband had the effing gall to reply, "Nah, she's married." I literally almost burst into flames on the spot when I saw that. I can't even describe how much I was shaking after reading these messages. First, I could have confronted Josh about this months ago, and still am so furious with myself for that. Josh would have been praying I didn't remember meeting Jake or that I wouldn't mention it. He would have been counting on his lucky stars that I never did. He probably thought he was hot shit for getting away with that and nearly burnt a hole through the floor thinking about it, LOL. Needless to say, I was devastated and still am to see all of that. I'm struggling to even process it all. But all that happened Saturday morning, and I immediately took myself to my friend's house. I'll call her Sophie. I went to her place to cry it out and show her what I found. She was extremely supportive and probably more furious than me. Around 1:30, I got a phone call from Josh. I hung it up immediately. He sent me a few messages along the lines of, "Where are you, baby? I'm ordering food. Want some? Sad not to wake up next to you this morning." Guys, I have to reiterate how much I love this man and how heart-wrenching it is to see him still act like nothing is wrong. It took so much willpower not to pretend none of it had happened and go home to him. I know a lot of you will yell at me or accuse me of being terrified of confronting him about this, which is not true. Please have some empathy. It takes me some time to process my emotions, and I wouldn't have been able to even form a sentence if I tried to confront him immediately. Sunday morning. I woke up feeling more angry than sad. I opened my phone and finally replied to his messages, "Coming home now and need to talk." I kept it cryptic to make him squirm, to be honest, because I was and I am fraught with emotions. I still can't remember the entire conversation word for word, but I'll try to replay it as best I can. Long story short, I got home, he tried to hug me, but I refused him. We stood in the kitchen. I did confront him, as someone suggested. I just said, "Why have you been telling your coworkers I'm your sister?" I wish it would have been like a movie scene where the color drained from his face, or immediately he looked like a deer in the headlights. But he didn't. It was like he'd been girding himself for this confrontation for a while, because he just frowned at me and looked flabbergasted. He just said, "Huh?" This made me so angry. How are you going to pretend to be stupid after 3 years of lying? I basically said, "Don't play effing dumb. 2 of your coworkers have greeted me as your sister, and I have proof of you telling them. And I know that you're pretending to be single." Essentially, I asked him what he had to say for himself. He still played stupid. He became moderately defensive and kept saying, "I don't know what you're talking about, or why would I lie about you?" I cannot describe how furious I was at this point, but I was in tears. I always cry when I'm angry. So he was trying to comfort me as I was having some kind of an irrational breakdown. I showed him the screenshot of his message, me and Cess, that said something, "You tell me." He just said, "I don't know what I'm looking at. I'm confused." I got so angry I left again and I went back to Sophie's because it felt like a dead-end road. I didn't think I was going to get him to admit anything, and I was getting so furious I couldn't continue. He was really upset and in tears, to me, which was evidence that he knew he was lying, and he knew he was going to have to come up with some explanation. He tried to get me to stay, but I told him, "Until you have something to say for yourself, we have nothing to talk about." About 8:30-ish, he called me again, and I did pick up. He basically asked for us to talk, and he said he has some things to say. So I went back to our apartment. He had written out a bunch of stuff on a piece of paper, as if he had prepared a speech, and sat me down on the couch. Here's the gist of what he said in bullet points. He started by apologizing relentlessly and admitting that he pretended to be stupid before because he couldn't immediately think of something to say for himself. He said that immediately after he started his job, he realized the atmosphere was like a frat house. All of his team members were men in their 20s and 30s. They were single and F-boys, his word. He noticed that one guy in their team was married and would either get picked on or essentially excluded from any and all social interactions. That included getting lunch, inside jokes, and going out on Friday. These guys were friendly and welcoming to Josh, and he admitted he was desperate to fit in. He hated the feeling like fresh meat, so he was scared. A few months in, they were out drinking after work. He admitted that after one of his workmates saw a picture of him and I on his lock screen, they asked him who I was, and in a moment of panic, he said, "My sister." He was really apologetic at this point, and he was crying a lot. He couldn't even look at me. He was just reading what he'd written. Anyway, he said from then on, he basically dug himself deeper and deeper because they kept grilling him about me and wanting to see more pictures of me. He said he had let it go on too long and he didn't have the balls to admit the lie. He said that those pictures of us and Noosa Dow were the only pictures he had ever purposefully sent them and deliberately lied about. After what he had called an endless barrage of pestering from his colleagues to share pics from his holiday, he said he was really ashamed he did that. He told me he'd never had an affair or considered it. Thus the messages were between him and his female colleagues were banter, and that it was commonplace to talk to people like that in the office. He also knows how disgusting it is and embarrassed to have been acting like an F-boy, again his word. He concluded his speech by apologizing and said he was disgusted with himself and ashamed that he'd lied for so long, but he felt like he trapped himself and couldn't find a way to get out of it. He says he knows he could have confessed to the truth, either to his coworkers or to me at any point, but he didn't because he was a coward. Anyway, I couldn't think of anything else to say at that point. He went to lock himself in the bathroom, and I sat on the couch crying. I still don't know if I can trust what he said, and a lie that extreme is baffling to me. If he can lie like that for so long, what else could he be lying about? His explanation and apology seemed so sincere and genuine, and I guess to an extent what he said is believable. He has always been extroverted, but very susceptible to peer pressure, especially from other blokes. If nothing else, to me, it's a sign of shocking immaturity. I packed up a bag and went back to Sophie's. I'm still at her place as I'm writing this. She said I can stay as long as I need to. I told Josh I needed time away from him to think about everything and whether or not I believe him or whether I can ever trust him again. He told me to take as long as I needed, and he will still be there if or when I get back. He said even if it takes a year. Interesting. Then he can be single for another year at work. Right now, nothing feels real. That's where I am right now. I'll take some time before I consider my next steps. I can't say whether I'm leaning towards forgiveness or divorce, but those are really my only two options. I would only take him back if he went to work and confessed everything that he had done for the last 3 years, that he was married and you were his wife.